Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we have to talk about what we saw today in the NFL draft. We got some really good football players who went off in the board in this draft, and I mean, this just goes to show what we kind of already knew. As much mock drafts as we can make, as much things as we can talk about, we will never have it for certain. We'll never have it 100% sure. And just starting this thing off, I want to talk about some of my winners in this draft. Is the draft really just concluded, and we're starting to talk about kind of the post-draft reactions as we get out of day one. First thing I want to talk about is starting it off, Chicago Bears. This was kind of a scenario that a lot of people wanted. When you talk about the Chicago Bears being on the board at 1 and 9, you look at this and say, now we got Caleb Williams. Now we got Roma Dunze. And I dropped a mock draft scenario, 7-round mock draft a couple of days ago. And I said, okay, if we got Rome on the board at 9, we can use this as a possible trade back scenario. But what they did right there was they took Rome, they paired him with Caleb Williams. We just saw Rome, Caleb Williams. They were on the flight, having that connection, starting to build that bond early. Now you bring that to the football field. You're looking at one of the best receiving cores just off the bat. Because when we look at Keenan Allen, who can play in the slot, can also play outside, played a lot of his reps in the slot for the LA Chargers. But now you look at that and say, we mix that along with DJ Moore. Then you have Roma Dunze, who can also serve as a big slot, can play outside for you as well, and Caleb Williams, along with the run game that you have. DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, now Khalil Herbert still being there in the backfield. So I think that's just something strong to start off this draft. But we have a lot of other people for the Los Angeles Chargers is getting Joe Alt. Now, I saw some J.C. Latham steam. I saw some other things right there. Like I said, me personally, I saw Neighbors on the board. That was a guy that I would have taken if I was in the Chargers boat. But for them, they go Alt, and you think Trey Pipkins, Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, I believe, is going to be that right tackle for this football team. Trey Pipkins, he can play guard. He can do some different things for that football team. So you're just looking at a best 5 scenario. But Joe Alt is just one of those tackle prospects that you can't pass up on, and the Los Angeles Chargers did that right there. Now, we're looking at Malik Neighbors. I think this is one of the picks that we kind of expected. If he's on the board, we want to take him right there. And as we got closer to the draft, I never really felt like J.J. McCarthy was the New York Giants guy. You look at Brian Dable and what he has. I think when they reinforced the offensive line the way they did, still have John Michael Schmitz at center, now we have to put as much weapons as we can around Daniel Jones. And that's not to say that 5 to 10 years down the road, he's going to be the quarterback, but we have to get the value that's on the board. And I believe Malik Neighbors, along with Marvin Harrison Jr., those are two can't miss, as close as you can get to can't miss. When we look at receiver prospects, now he's not the same type of flavor. He's going to move around various alignments, but he's a playmaker. He's electric. He's going to get down the football field. He's going to find the end zone a lot for Daniel Jones in this football team. Now, Arnold. Hey, man, when I talk about winners of the draft, let's talk about this for a second. For the Detroit Lions, understanding kind of what the needs are. You look at corner, that's somewhere they wanted to go. Edge, that's somewhere they want to go. But to get, and you could check out the video. I dropped it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I said I compared Quinion Mitchell, Terry Arnold. I compared those two guys, and I said, who is my cornerback one in this NFL draft? And for me, just me personally, the flavor that I like, I went with Terry Arnold. And I understand they both can be elite corners in the NFL, but I just like the physicality. And you talk about Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, what type of football players do they like on this team? Terry Arnold is that type of guy. Then you look at it. He played with Brian Branch. Put those two back together. Look at what you have in the secondary right there. You also think about some of the pieces outside of that, and you still have some more draft capital to add. I think that was a home run fit, and I was surprised that because actually I want to look at the board on this. When there was a certain pick, the Indianapolis Colts, they went live to Latu. And I understand they want to add to the edge. He was my number 1 edge in this class. I thought that was a team that could have gotten Quinion Mitchell. I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They could have gotten Quinion Mitchell. The Los Angeles Rams, they could have gotten Quinion Mitchell. But he goes 22 to the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that also needed corner. They got one of their corners, and they didn't have to move at all. You look at the Detroit Lions, yes, they moved up a couple of spots with the Dallas Cowboys, but they got one of my top players in this draft without having to do too much and give up that much capital. I like that for the Detroit Lions. I think when you look at the secondary, this was a long, long time coming. And I want to talk about some more of my winners for this draft. There's a lot. There's a lot that I like. I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers getting Troy Fautanu. When we look at that right there, that was what I thought was going to happen. I thought the Seahawks we're actually going to get Troy Fautanu, because the New Orleans Saints, they took Talisa Fuanga, and I said, okay, Troy Fautanu is a guy who I think could also play guard. And when you look at that for the Seattle Seahawks, could he kick inside for them? Also, I thought that the perfect fit for Troy Fautanu would really be the Miami Dolphins. But when he goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they pick him up just one pick before the Miami Dolphins can get their hands on him. They go edge, they get Chop Robinson. But just imagine that. And we think about Teron Armstead, he is getting a little bit older, but like I said, he can Troy Fautanu, he could plug and play in guard and still kick back outside to the left tackle if he were to go to the Miami Dolphins. There were some teams that really got some steals in here. You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, they picked up Brian Thomas Jr., didn't have to do too much to get him. They even traded down and still got Brian Thomas Jr., who a lot of people thought had a lot of steam, is going to the Indianapolis Colts, but he's right there. So I'm thinking Gabe Davis, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Trevor Lawrence. He gets him another receiver, somebody who can get down the football field, ultra athletic receiver. So I do like that right there. And now I want to talk about the Minnesota Vikings, because I talked about them trading down, actually trading up one spot, moving with the New York Jets. I like what the New York Jets did as well. But you get J.J. McCarthy and you get Dallas Turner. And like I said, you didn't have to go to 5. You didn't have to go to 4. You didn't even go to 3 to try to get Drake May. You stayed put, moved up one spot, got your guy in J.J. McCarthy, who I think will be a good fit for this football team. Like I said, when I first got into the draft process, I just really didn't see it with J.J. McCarthy. But the more and more that I watched a little bit more film, I'm seeing, okay, yeah, they run the ball. Yeah, there's games like Penn State where he's not throwing the ball as much, but when they really needed him in some of those situations, when it's 3rd and 12, when it's 3rd and 8, and we have to make a throw beyond the sticks, now you see the arm talent on display a little bit. Now you see kind of that playmaking extension a little bit. So I think with J.J. McCarthy, he's going to be eased into this offense. Don't forget, they got Aaron Jones in the backfield. Like I said, I do like the offensive line. I like the receivers they have there, and I like Kevin O'Connell as a play caller. So I do like what the Minnesota Vikings did. And for Dallas Turner, you're coming into a situation where they picked up Jonathan Grenard, Daniil Hunter. He went over to the Houston Texans. They also picked up Andrew Van Ginkel. So now, if I'm thinking about everything we have with the Minnesota Vikings, I like the edge. We know what Brian Flores is going to do. He's going to blitz you. So I actually thought for them, Quinion Mitchell and J.J. McCarthy would kind of be a home run fit, because I know that he likes to play cover 1. He likes to play cover 0. He's sending the pressure. And I thought that Quinion Mitchell, he could play some off coverage. He could also pressure a little bit, as we saw at the Senior Bowl, kind of building up that profile. But they went with Dallas Turner. And like I said, I do like it. I like him as an edge. I just thought Quinion Mitchell would be the guy for them. The Kansas City Chiefs getting Xavier Worthy. 4-2-1. Some people are going to look at that and say, does it translate? Are we getting John Ross? Are we getting Tyquan Thornton? Or are we getting Deshaun Jackson? Are we getting Tyreek Hill? What kind of football player are we getting? And I think you're getting Xavier Worthy. I wouldn't compare him to any of those guys, honestly. I'm seeing the Tank Dell comparison, but I just think with Xavier Worthy, kind of plugging him into that system that you have over there with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, you have your intermediate threats. You have Rashee Rice, who can do a little bit of things. He's probably going to have a suspension to start the season, but you're going to have him. He's kind of that playmaker underneath. Then you bring in Hollywood Brown. He can stretch the football field. Xavier Worthy, of course, he can stretch the football field with the 4-2-1. Now, you still have Travis Kelce. You still have Isaiah Pacheco. And you got Patrick Mahomes, who's elevated to a point where it's not a defense that he can't see, and it's not a defense that he can't process and get through the reads on. So when I look at that, I'm just thinking about a gadget in Andy Reid's offense. Andy Reid was the worst person to see a guy like this with. And I always thought, okay, what if they get their hands on Ladd McConkey, who I really like as a receiver? He is still on the board. Adonai Mitchell is still on the board. But Xavier Worthy, really any guy that they get, Andy Reid is going to maximize his talent and find the best thing out of him. They needed this guy. You're going to have to open up the box, let Isaiah Pacheco run a little bit. We're going to have to cover these guys down the football field. We can't sit on everything underneath and say we're just going to play football like this, keep everything in front of us, because now the Kansas City Chiefs have guys who can run behind you, and that's what they needed for the longest. When we saw this football team struggling, they were struggling with drops, focus drops, not being disciplined. We talk about Kadarius Toney, what he had, neutral zone infraction versus the Buffalo Bills. But now I think kind of as they got into the playoffs, we saw that team flip the switch a little bit. And then as they won the Super Bowl, we started to see everything click for that football team. So I think Xavier Worthy is a really, really good piece for this team. And I like to see them go tackle in the later round, something they can add. Quinn Mitchell, I'm thinking, like I said, when you didn't have to move and you get a guy like Quinn Mitchell who matches really the athletic profile, the coverage profile, a lot of the things that you want. And when I talked about Quinn Mitchell, from what I saw on film, I felt that he was a guy who can move around, do a lot of different things. I feel like he can play nickel. I feel like he can play on the outside. Of course, he's going to be that lockdown guy on the outside, but wherever you want to use him, along with Darius Slay and James Bradbury, I feel like he's that plug and play. And you look at Vic Fangio now coming over to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's going to want to run those exotic coverages. He's going to want to do a lot of things there. I want to get to Byron Murphy. And I think this is interesting for the Seattle Seahawks because, like I said, there were players on the board who I thought they possibly could draft. But we kind of see they went with that BPA approach. They wanted to get the best player available. And you look at kind of what they have on the edges. Daryl Taylor, Uchenna Nwosu, Boy Mafe, Derek Hall. Now, they still brought in Leonard Williams. They extended Leonard Williams. But they're adding to that defensive line. And when I think about it, I say, okay, who's the new head coach? Mike McDonald. Where does he come from? Baltimore Ravens. That 3-tech and Justin Matabuke, who can penetrate the gap, who can get after the quarterback from that alignment, that was vital to that defense. That allows some of those guys that we look at in the Baltimore Ravens. You look at Jadeveon Clowney. You look at Kyle Van Noy. What they were able to do there, I think you're eating there because you have guys on the interior who can get after the quarterback. Now you're drawing linemen. Now you're drawing the pass protection to lean to the inside. So Mike McDonald really getting his 3-tech. That's explosive. And the sack numbers, like I said, with Johnny Newton, the production is just off the wall. But if you look at the disruption, what he brings in the run game and how he can get after the quarterback as well, I think Byron Murphy was really a home run pick for me when you look at all of the linemen that were kind of off the board. Now, a pick that I haven't talked about, talking about Brock Bowers going to the Las Vegas Raiders. I think with the tackle depth in this draft, this was just a BPA move, best player available. I was kind of surprised that they didn't go Talisa Fuanga. I thought that was something they can do, getting the right tackle there. But to get Brock Bowers, when I was marking Michael Penix to the Las Vegas Raiders, I understood that it was kind of, he's going to be pushed up the board based on how we knew these quarterbacks were going, based on how they went in this draft. If you wanted Michael Penix Jr., there's no second round. And it's saying if we don't feel that he's the guy, we feel okay with missing out on him. I think that they felt okay with missing out on Michael Penix Jr. Now, Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, Devonta Adams. And Gardner Minshew, I think, gives you kind of a safe floor when you talk about that division, but you're still going to have to look at it. Kansas City Chiefs are right there. Los Angeles Chargers are right there. So it's going to be interesting. This is going to be a defensive-minded team with Antonio Pierce, Max Crosby. They brought in Christian Wilkins. I just think he's such a dynamic playmaker. I don't view Brock Bowers as a traditional tight end. You watch the film, he is the offense for the Georgia Bulldogs, along with Lad McConkey. So it's just so many things he can do there. And I like the pick, understanding what the depth of this class is. Like I said, just going back to the Chicago Bears, some things that I like there, just looking at that connection, man. The NFC North is about to be wild. You look at the Green Bay Packers, you see Jordan Love, what he did in the playoffs in the back half of that season. Then you look at Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, the receivers they have there, Christian Watson. Then you look at the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff, Amara St. Brown. I mean, that extension, along with extending Penei Sewell, big time moves and really securing cornerstones of your franchise. But what is Jameson Williams going to look like next season? These are the types of questions that you have to have. And I think also, really, they could serve to add another receiver. Olu Fashanu to the New York Jets. I really like that. Now, as we kind of see with the New York Jets, they didn't go Brock Bowers. And a lot of people said, okay, you bring in Morgan Moses, you bring in Tyron Smith. Do you have kind of that insurance a little bit at the tackle position? Elijah Vera Tucker's coming back. You look at what they have there along the interior. Do you feel solid getting Brock Bowers, getting a tackle later down the draft? But no, I really like what they did. And I thought Olu Fashanu was a very good pick right here because how much can you trust Tyron Smith to stay healthy a full season at the left tackle position? Morgan Moses, he's getting older at that right tackle position. So just to get a tackle in the door and feel very confident about him, he's going to develop. He's going to be very good. So like I said, guys, I'll be back on stream tomorrow. We're going to be on for day 2 during the process. But thank you guys for tuning in, man. This was a great one talking about day 1 of the 2024 NFL draft. And we're going to be back